John Morton's out, and there's 15 or so names that are now in. But which offensive coordinator can actually sustain what Dan Campbell and Benedict Johnson built without becoming the next one-year experiment? Is Mike McDaniels the guy, or is it a sleeper like Mike Kafka? Let's get into it. Forward down the field.
Jameer down to the 10. Jameer to the 5. Jameer to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Hand off Berry. Skirts to the left side. Breaks the tackle. And he will take it in. Touchdown.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. That's what I'm talking about. It is caught. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, baby, what a play that time. Aiden Hutchinson read that and blew it up. Big time stand by that defense. Busted outside left.
All right. Lions, Gray Maze family, thank you for tuning in today. It's a special episode. We decided we'd blow out the pipes. We had some issues going live on X the last few times that we've gone live. So if you're watching on X, smash that love, retweet, repost. I guess you can't say retweet anymore, whatever that is. So this is a bit of a test, but, we're Lions fans, and it's a football Saturday. It's an NFL football Saturday, and what better way to spend an NFL football Saturday than to talk about a team that isn't in the playoffs any longer, our Detroit Lions. And I'd like to introduce to you the two other gentlemen on the screen. My name is Chris Stone, by the way. I'm at castahead.net. And the two gentlemen on my screen, I call him DK, Dan Keener from the great state of Ohio. How are we doing today?
Not too bad. Considering that we're watching two teams from our division play each other, knowing that one of them is going to get knocked out. So that brings a smile to my face. And doesn't matter which one at this point.
Right.
It's like watching the SEC get their butts railed through in the college football playoff.
Right.
Doesn't matter who wins at this point. SEC's out. We're good.
Exactly. It's like, can we hope for the NFL's first double loss today, Brent? What do you think?
Can we make them tie?
Well, it was great last night watching Indiana just destroy Oregon. Not that I'm anti-Oregon. I actually like Oregon, but the Big Ten. Could you imagine Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana in back-to-back years after all the years of suffering that we've heard at the hands of the SEC. But I do point out to all my SEC friends, the Big Ten is 500 against them in the last 8 years. So, which conference is better? I think we've got a good argument why the Big Ten is better after 3 straight natties.
Well, I think the SEC is like 4-10 in bowls this year, and one of those wins was against their own conference. So, in the playoffs, the NIL. I mean, let's just be honest. NIL has just totally leveled the playing field. Even the blue bloods and the Ohio States and the Texases and Oklahomas, those schools, even there, they're losing players to mid-tier schools. If you can afford somebody, they'll come play for you, because really it's money and it's playing time, and and that goes both ways. A lot of the big boys, they don't want to pay for a 5-star freshman to sit on the bench because he hasn't earned playing time yet, and it's just kind of a waste, and then they leave. So it's going to be interesting to see how this changes.
Absolutely. But
bonus content.
Unfortunately, this is not a college football show. Fortunately or unfortunately, but we want to say hello to our friends. Want to thank you for joining us and being patient, for us as well. I know that we got started a little bit late today. But just blame me. Blame the producer. It's always part of the deal. And Mr. Dab313, howdy to you as well. Boy, if you're from the 313, howdy's not like, that's from where, that's Georgia speak. So wherever you're joining us, thanks for doing that. Smash the subscribe button, the like, all that fun stuff, especially if you want content like this. What up, Doe? Mike Terry, also in the house for this impromptu live stream. Gentlemen, I felt like instead of just showing up and talking about, why the Big Ten is so much more dominant than the SEC, I thought it would be a good idea, since it seems like every day we're getting new information as far as what's going on for offensive coordinator. Our last show, we talked about the potential of having David Blau. The Lions had, sort of announced that they were going to reach out to the former Lions quarterback, and now the Washington Commanders have announced that he will be their new offensive coordinator, which they didn't want him to leave the building, and so they must have given him an offer that he can't refuse. Obviously had a great relationship going on there with Jaden Daniels, and we wish him the best, unless it affects our Detroit Lions, and then, of course, we wish him the worst. But it was kind of nice thing to at least see him have that success. But that's a name we could scratch off. There's other names we can scratch off. But I felt like the name that everyone wants to talk about is the name that everybody knows that may not necessarily be our offensive coordinator. But the Lions made the announcement shortly after he was released of his duties with the Miami Dolphins, and that they are going to be talking to Mike McDaniel as potential fit for us as offensive coordinator. So that's probably the most polarizing name on this list, guys. He's got this run coordinator pedigree. He's a Shanahan disciple. He's had, obviously, historically, some explosive offensive success in Miami, but then it all collapsed, right? And so I thought it would be a good idea for us to sort of break that down, kind of have each one of you talk about your thoughts about McDaniel. If you feel like right now he's in your mind, maybe what you would like to see, or if you've got another guy that you'd rather have than Mike McDaniel. Dan, I'll let you start off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw cold water on Mike McDaniel, but
Okay.
he's a plus 500 head coach that got let go, and he's going to be in demand for. There's 8 head coaching openings. I don't think any have been filled yet. There's 8 head coaching openings, and you can guarantee that Harbaugh is going to get one of them for sure. And I would not be surprised if McDaniel gets another, and
Yeah.
I just don't think he's a legit. We're going to talk to him. I know there's a lot of professional respect, especially after we did joint practices with them this year. Him and Campbell have a lot of respect for one another. But, the guy, he's only been offensive coordinator for 1 year at San Francisco, had a great run. They played super well that year. Parlayed that into the Miami coaching job, and he didn't do a bad job in Miami. I mean, Miami is a problem due to their owner, and the way they had their office structured. I mean, they forced Tua on him. Tua, the guy is a heck of an athlete. He was a heck of a quarterback in college, but he has his limitations, not just size-wise, but the guy's had like 6 or 7 concussions in his career, and he's been playing different. You got to protect yourself, and if you're a smaller guy and your game is based off of being elusive and running and that sort of thing, and you all of a sudden have to start protecting yourself so you don't hurt yourself long term, that's going to impact your play. And Ross initially said he was going to keep McDaniel, and then all of a sudden Harbaugh shows up on the market, and everybody knows Ross is a huge University of Michigan donor and supporter, and a huge fan of the Harbaugh family, all the way from Jack all the way down to John and Jim. So, yeah, it feels like it's possible that McDaniel got the shaft just because Ross wants to go after Harbaugh, and he couldn't do that while McDaniel was still there. So, but I have no problem with the guy coming in. I think he'd be fine.
Yeah. I
think he would give us a different set of eyes, and blend his past history with what Dan wants. But I really feel listening to the press conferences and seeing he's had 3 offensive coordinators. 2 of them have been veterans, older guys that failed miserably, and the one guy that he was able to kind of like bring along slowly and mold and have him, he's not a control freak, but he wants it his way. And Johnson did that, and he added extras to it. He made it better, right? Unpredictability, the creative play calling, which is something Blau, from my understanding, had a lot of input in. He suggested a boatload of plays to Ben Johnson while he was here. A lot of our trick plays came from him. So, I think that it's not out of the realm if McDaniel doesn't get a head coaching job. I just don't see him not getting hired.
Yeah. Brent, your thoughts on Mike?
Yeah, I think Dan hit the main points very well there. And what I would say is he's a guy that has a very good offensive mind and would I'm sure do miraculous things with the talent that the Lions have on offense. So the reality is that he's probably not going to be the guy. But I go back to Antoine Randall. I was chatting with Mike Saucin the other night for all those gray mains that remember Mike Saucin, and he's really bullish on Antoine Randall as a potential name. Blau I think would have been an excellent candidate, but keep your eyes on Antoine Randall as kind of a sleeper pick that might be the guy that the Lions lean towards. And then the last thing I'll say is Dan listed, guys that are probably going to get a job. I would love to see Brian Flores get another opportunity, but you know how the NFL is.
Yeah, right.
Anywhere but the NFC North.
Yes.
There's no openings in the NFC North, so
or any other NFC team on our schedule, please. Yes.
He's a free agent, right, Brent?
But let me let me just say this, and then you guys jump back in. But he definitely has filed suit against the NFL previously for unfair hiring practices.
Yep.
And we know how the NFL protects the sell on guys that file lawsuits and are what are considered rabble rousers or guys that are hard to deal with. So that may hurt Flores. I think he would be just a fantastic coach defensively for the Lions. I think he's gonna get another head coaching opportunity as well.
I agree. I think he's as long as he can sort of keep his DNA in that defense that he goes to. He obviously was not successful as a head coach previously, but that doesn't mean there's been examples. I mean, maybe Mike or Dan can bring them out of guys that were coordinators that were hired as head coaches, were not successful as head coaches, went back to coordinators, then back to head coach again. It doesn't mean that just because you were a failed head coach once, that means you're going to fail again. I mean, there's lots of other factors, right?
And the thing about Flores is there's 17 opportunities for Brian Flores. There's 8 head coaches, 8 potential defensive coordinators in his current job with the Vikings that could be open, right? He will get a job somewhere. He is too good of a coach. Everything Brent said is 100% true. He's, it's the whole bite the hand that feeds you. And, a lot of the stuff was just, it's hard to say all happened in Miami. And again, we're talking about Miami, they just do stupid stuff down there apparently. But I really expect Flores to take, I think he had one interview maybe with Baltimore already for head coach or one request. But he's a free agent. He's not signed with the Vikings. They want to sign him back, but I think he's going to take the best opportunity for him, which could be money wise, or a head coaching position again, just kind of wrap that thread up.
Yeah. So he's the biggest name, guys, and there's some other names that I would say sort of are like, the B plus, right? As far as like the number of people that are talking about him. And then there's kind of like the dark horses as well that people are saying, maybe, and we don't even know if the Lions are talking to some of these people, but we've got a new person here in the chat, at least the new to me, and which is Reversion to the Mean 6129. Thanks for joining us today. This is a name that has come up that's a part of the McVay tree as well. Reversion to the Mean says, if not McDaniel, maybe Nate Scheelhaas, the Rams pass game coordinator.
Brought him up last show.
Yeah, is ready for an offensive coordinator. I mean, listen, he led the NFL's most prolific passing attack with Stafford in LA. Do you guys think that somebody like that can translate to Goff in Detroit?
Why don't we actually talk about the guys that are known and not the ones that we want or the fan base is interested in, right? Because we have. Well, I'm just saying,
we have somebody here that's asked about it. So, do you guys have
the problem with Scheelhaas is we don't know because he can't touch him until next week, right? So, anybody that's playing this weekend, Antoine Rendell, you already brought up, JT Barrett, who's also on the Bears staff, Shieldhouse. We can't touch these guys. You can throw a request in for them, and that might become public, but nobody can interview them until after this weekend's games, right?
Right.
So, but who we can talk about, like I said, is, and if you go to the graymains.com, we have a live coaching carousel post going. We have 4 candidates. One of them is now off the books, which is David Blau. Which, interesting enough, I saw today that we actually tried to hire Blau last year too. So that's 2 years in a row we tried to hire Blau away from Washington, and they finally just locked him down, and it wasn't just us. I had heard 2 other teams, Chicago last year, and I'm not sure who the third team was, but 3 teams tried to line him up last year. But now, right there where you're at, Chris, those are the options, right?
And for
So
those
right
that
now,
are, for those that are listening, we're just going to list them really quick, Dan.
Yeah.
Those that are just listening. David Blau, obviously hired as Commanders as of yesterday. Mike McDaniel, who we just spoke about. Jake Peets, who is on the list here to talk about, who's the Seattle passing game coordinator. And T. Martin. I can't help but think about him in a Tennessee Volunteers football uniform, but T. Martin also listed there as well. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, and these are the guys that have been announced, broken by the media or so forth, So absolutely, I would suspect that Campbell's gonna look at guys like Shieldhouse. He's gonna look at other guys in his coaching tree. He may not go back to McVay, or not McVay. May not go back to Denver, where he got Morton from last year. But I really feel, I've been posting their ages out there. Martin's 47. He's the oldest of the guys, but I really feel like he's going to go for a younger guy that he can mold. He can keep play calling for as long as necessary until the next person is up to speed and he trusts them.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wants to recreate Ben Johnson's rise to stardom, right? And if you bring in a guy, you bring in a Mike McDaniel and just say they light it up, you're replacing him next year. So, we were lucky to get 3 years out of Ben Johnson. He probably should have left the year before. The right opportunity, and last year apparently he found it. So that's something you got to consider, is especially these older been around, the Brown and McDaniel's been, which there's a few other guys floating around. You just got to. I don't think you need to worry. You want to hire the best guy, but you have to have that in the back of your head. It's like, how long is this guy going to be? I firmly believe that the coaching continuity this year helped rip apart our season. We turned over so many coaches, and not just the coordinators, so many of our hands-on day-to-day position guys. We lost, I think, 10 total coaches from last year. And you lose that continuity because most of those guys have been with us for since day one of Campbell.
Right,
and
right.
you lose all those guys. It started last year. We lost our tight end coach. We hired a guy, and then he immediately left. So here we go. You had the tight ends are going to be in their third positional coach in the last 3 years. So maybe they promote the assistant. It's been a very quiet, interestingly enough, very quiet search. There's been no names have come up. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Brent, your thoughts?
Yeah. Another name that's come up is T. Martin. And T. Martin is another one of those guys of the same cut, like what we talked about, and that is young, up and coming coaches.
He's 47. He's not young.
Well, I think 47 is young, Dan.
Well, we are graymains. He's a kid to us, but
a quarterback, former quarterback, and so keep an eye out. Probably this week, I think the Lions will end up settling on somebody.
He has the interesting connection to St. Brown too, right? He was his wide receivers coach his freshman year at USC when he just had a fantastic season.
Yep, that's right. So, the connections there could be something that really strikes home. I'm sure he would have even got an interview if Amon-Ra had said, this is not a guy I could work with, right?
Yeah.
When the name starts floating around, he says, that guy is not our kind of guy. So he's a what I would call a hot commodity for the Lions to look at for offensive coordinator.
And he's
I
available.
mean, every name that we talked about are sort of the same cut, right? Young, 47 aside, younger guys that have served in offensive positions in college and the professionals, and who could really come in and Campbell could work very closely with. And as we talked about, I think the model that the Lions may use next year is Campbell may call plays, much like what he did with Benedict Johnson, as many like to call him, before he left. So Campbell could call plays for a while he develops and trains his replacement. So even back on the Mike Martin conversation, the Campbell calling plays for some period of time, he would probably be the only one of the list that we've talked about that would come in and start calling plays immediately.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of this too. When you're looking at somebody, it's like, you can go for the name, like whether it's Dayball or McDaniel or these guys that are like, okay, they can come right away. We don't have to worry about, Campbell calling those plays. But how quickly are these guys going to get right back into a head coaching job if they do? Or are they even going to, and like, I guess Dan brought this up as well. I mean, McDaniel could be a head coach somewhere. And so, that's, but if you bring in a guy like T. Martin, who coached Lamar Jackson to, when Lamar had an MVP season, right? And maybe there's something there that Campbell feels like he can work with, and there's still going to be a few years at least before people are going, oh my gosh, look at the Lions offense, how amazing it is. Well, let's hire their offensive coordinator as a head coach, right? Like teams have poached our coordinators before. So. Mike Terry is saying here that David Shaw was interviewed for the Cardinals offensive coordinator position, which is and he is.
Where did that come from?
And this is the Lions passing game coordinator. So that's an interesting thing. So we may have that open position, which is not which we had talked about before.
Get that out there. To Brent's point, Chris, really quick.
Mm-hmm.
The only two teams we can interview this week that are in the playoffs, obviously everybody that's out, you can interview any of their coaches, but is Seattle and who's the AFC's rep? Denver, I think. So Seattle and Denver on the bye. So their coaches are available to interview this week. Then they're off limits until they're bounced out of the playoffs. Next week, I believe we can interview anybody that's playing this weekend. Obviously half the teams, there's 6 teams are going to be gone and the other 6 will be still in, but you can get to their coaches, I believe, next week. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I think after that, everybody's off limits till they're out of the playoffs through the end of the Super Bowl. So, Brent's point, I think if we want to do, is it Jeet? I think it is from Seattle. That guy, or Pete's, sorry.
Yep.
So Pete's, we could interview him this week. I don't think there's anybody on Denver's staff that we're looking at that I'm aware of. But the rest of them we can't touch till next week. So they've got a few requests in. But I think the only one they've requested that's still in the playoffs is, let me see here. I'm not even sure. Do they have any of them that are still in the playoffs? Martin's out, right? Pete's, he could do this week. McDaniel's fired and they're out. So no, they have not tipped their hand to anybody that's still in the playoffs. So,
yeah, the
so
Pete's,
that
the Pete's thing is interesting, and I do want to sit here for a second and talk about Pete's, because I think that's a name that like I would say a majority of Lions fans are just like, who, right? They don't know who he is. But I mean, here's a tweet by at football guy _ Al Karsten. Here's the offenses Jake Pete's has worked with. Alabama offenses led by A.J. McCarron and Tua Tagovailoa. Jay Gruden and Sean McVay led both of those Washington offenses he was a part of. Derek Carr's Raiders season, where he finished 3rd in MVP voting. Christian McCaffrey's first-team All-Pro season in Carolina. LSU offense featuring Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Keyshawn Butte, Jack Beck, and Trey Palmer. Puka Nakua's rookie season with the Rams, and of course Jackson Smith and Jigba's breakout season in Seattle. So there is, he's been called detailed by multiple coordinator, has got the track record here of elevating these individual players, but he's bounced around to 10 plus stops in 20 years. I mean, Brent, do you think that's a red flag as far as an organizational fit? I mean, we don't want to test OC here. We don't want to just, every year we're bouncing in and out, flipping around offensive coordinators. Or do you think that this diverse experience actually makes him more adaptable to Campbell's vision?
Well, it's certainly a red flag when somebody can't keep a job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm using the air quote. You can't keep a job, so you're constantly bouncing from job to job to job. However, some of the most I'd call ingenious minds that I've met are people that believe that they serve in a position for a year or two and they develop a system, they develop people, they put their processes in place, et cetera, and then they move on to new opportunities. And it's a continuous upward trend in those positions. I can't tell you in his specific case whether it's a case of can't keep a job or whether he's developing and getting better opportunities. You'd have to sit down with him if you're Dan Campbell and the rest of the staff and see how well
ask him that question, right? Hey, you bounced around a lot. Why? Tell me why. I mean, that's how many of us as managers have had interviews and you look at the resume and it looks like a CVS receipt. You're just like, well, you've got a great amount of experience, but you spent like an average of 6 months in all these positions. Let's talk about it. So
major red flag.
Yeah,
right?
you got to believe that they're asking those questions too, right? And maybe it's for him. It's just I haven't found the right fit, and you're the team that is, or whatever.
Yeah. So, but back on something that I don't think we said this, but that Dan routinely talks about is Brian Flores, or I'm sorry, Mike Terry might have said this, but Flores was hated by his players when he was a head coach, and so. There's something here that may be that, right, where the guy is so abrasive, they couldn't stand him for longer than a season, so he moved a new role after new role. So you have to be careful with that too, because I do believe strongly the Lions locker room is so strong, the leadership that you have from Goff and Amon-Ra and Panay and others. I think Gibbs is pretty strong character and a good character, and I mean that in a good character way. Mm-hmm. But you may be able to stand bringing in a personality like Flores into the Lions at this point because of the culture and how strong it is. But it's not ideal, I don't think.
We don't have a position open for Flores.
Chef's
not getting fired, right?
I don't think you were listening to me. Because
I wasn't. I was actually updating the website.
I know. That's what that was.
It's called multitasking, sir.
Yes, I know. But the point that I was making was that difficult personalities like Flores, the Lions could potentially bring in. At this point, I wasn't saying Flores specifically.
I mean, wouldn't coaches fall under the no turds rule that Campbell has too? I mean, if you got personalities that are strong, but they're borderline, I mean, there's one thing to be good and be a strong, outspoken individual. There's one where you just come across as an a-hole to your players and you turn them off. I think that's the line that Campbell toes that line. He's a former player, so I think if he gets somebody that is in that mold of him, I don't think it's a problem. But if you get somebody like that is, these players nowadays, they're changing, right? They're not nearly as tough old warriors that could handle anything like they used to be. A lot of these guys, they bring extra baggage with them, for whatever reason, and they get, there's more concern about other things than they used to be. So, sometimes old school hardline coaches are a big turnoff to guys. So, and you don't want to neuter a coach whose style, may work with one roster, but it definitely doesn't work with another. We've had that. I mean, Bobby Ross came into our roster. That guy was a proven winner, been to the Super Bowl. He comes in and they hated his guts.
Military,
because
man.
Wayne Fontes was
those military guys,
fullback in front of Barry.
And Wayne was a player's coach, though, right? He was a player's coach, and Bobby Ross was not. He said my way or the highway, and Barry said, see ya. So, that's a great example. So, but yeah, to your point, I think it could be mitigated, but the question is how much are you taking away from the guy's style if you ask him to tone it down, not be himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think Bobby Ross was, as I was trying to say, and as I was interjecting over you, was he tried to put a fullback in front of Barry, and Barry's dad said, "Barry ain't running behind no fullback."
That's the first
so,
problem is Barry's dad. You take those two words out of it, that's one of the problems we got with kids today too. He was ahead of his time.
The point was, over dinner, Barry saying, I'm not sure about this fullback thing. You know how Barry was. I'm not sure about it. His dad wears it as a badge of honor to go, Barry's not running behind no fullback.
Because this is the same guy that just continuously said his son was not as good as Jim Brown and never would be, so take it with a grain of salt. But he wasn't wrong. Barry's style was that of he needed a complete open palette in front of him. He did not need a path. This isn't a video game from the 80s where you got to follow the,
took away one of his lanes, right? It took away one of his lanes. I mean,
Barry... it did, you take away an opening, right? It's an option. Barry, everything on that field was an option for Barry Sanders. He would go back 20 yards to get 80 yards, but he could do it. Jammo doesn't, and he loses 10. But, but yeah, you're right. You're dead on with that. That's just he didn't need a fullback because his skill set and his vision was so good. So many guys need fullbacks because they completely lack vision or feel for the game. They don't know how to cut back. They can't see the lanes, so they just got to follow Mongo through the flipping hole, and get their 3 yards and call it a day, right?
Or they were just big physical backs, right? They didn't have that side to side or
James Stewart
the explosion. Well, I mean, there's been a lot of great NFL running backs who are of that cut. I mean, I remember Mark Van Egan and Sam Bam Cunningham and Riggins.
Mack from the Browns.
Those big physical backs who, they wanted, I mean, they'd run over the back end of the Earl Campbell, Mike Terry said, but they'd run over the back of their fullback to gain that 3-4 yards in a cloud of dust. But boy, those guys, man, they were physical. And they couldn't hop like Barry. Man, those feet of Barry, my God, I've never seen anything like that in my life. The way he could go side to side and back to 90 miles an hour in one step.
I hate to interrupt all the Barry Sanders glazing guys, but we'll save that for another show because we could talk for 3 hours about Barry Sanders. And this is a good segue. Before we start, we go right back into the offensive coordinator conversation because there are a few names I'd love to get your thoughts on here, guys. Starting Tuesday night, we go live every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And starting this Tuesday will be a brand new segment on Lions Gray Mains, and it is... That's right, the Lions Hall, the Gray Mains Hall of the Underrated. And so this is going to be about, for those who are watching and listening, this is not going to be about the Barry Sanders, because I think Barry is properly rated. This is more about those Lions. You may want to come up, and we're going to open this up to fans, to listeners, to viewers here as well. You may think that a current player on our roster is underrated, but this is a haul, so it's going to start very historic for us. We're a little longer in the fang here at Lions Gray Mains.
Late 70s.
Yes, so we're talking like 70s, 80s, 90s is going to be mostly what we're talking about in the 2000s, and some players that you may not know about, but you should know about. And we felt like it was time for us to blow the dust off the shelf and put a little shine on some great players. So if you have someone someone that you think should be a part of the Gray Mains Hall of Underrated. We're going to have polls on our social media. Certainly you can put them in the comments, any suggestions like that. We're going to keep track of that as we go through the off season and tally up a listener and viewer vote as well. So that's something to look forward to. But guys, let's go back to the coordinators, because we touched on one of these guys. And these are guys that are currently unemployed and that were former head coaches, that are names that have been tossed out there as potential candidates that we don't know have been, that haven't been spoken to officially yet from the Lions. We talked about Daboll. He has that Campbell connection, that run heavy philosophy. He's built for more dual threat quarterbacks, I think, for what he's done. We also have to talk about Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year, just got, is no longer a coach of the Browns. And then, of course, these are names, Dan. I can see.
I was laughing at the 2-time coach of the year nonsense because he stole one from Campbell.
Coach of the year means about as much as this Michigan pen right here. If that...
Sorry, I wear my
that's worth millions.
Right.
I wear my jerkiness on my sleeve sometimes.
And then finally, the third head coach that is being thrown around as a potential fit for offensive coordinator is Callahan, who was a part of.
Threw him around.
Sucks. Anyway, Dan, since you love to have opinions during my question, I'll actually ask you a question that you can answer. Daboll and Campbell worked together in Miami. That was 15 plus years ago. He's committed. He's obviously committed to running the ball. I'd say his best work was probably with Josh Allen in Buffalo, who's more like a dual threat, not like Jared Goff. Do you think Daboll's scheme might translate to a pure pocket passer like Goff, or is this just this doesn't make football sense? What are your thoughts?
Let me give you the good answer and then the Dan answer, right? So the good answer is a good offensive coordinator can tailor their scheme to any personnel. That's the canned answer.
Yep.
The Dan answer is, I don't know if Daboll's scheme can go. He had obviously, Buffalo with Josh Allen. They went through multiple backs. They had good running games there. They never really had. I mean, they had a couple of wide receivers that were good, but they kind of ran them all off. I don't know if he's ever had the kind of talent that the Lions have available to him at all 4 skill position spots, right? I mean, that's a little different. I mean, the Giants have just been a disaster since he's been there. They had Saquon, and they ran him into the ground, and then shipped him off to Philly, where he had one good year, and then he was mediocre for his standards this year, right? So yeah, it's hard to say. I just don't know if he would translate. And the other thing you have to think is he might have worked with Campbell, but is he willing to I just keep going back to this thing with Campbell. I think Campbell wants somebody that will do what he wants and sprinkle in fresh ideas and viewpoints. He doesn't want anybody that's going to completely change the system.
Yeah, he doesn't want just a yes guy either. Like, why? Well, I could do this. I could do this without you, kind of thing, right? Like, take some shots and be inventive on top of this offense. I think that makes total sense.
Dable's system comes out of the same pedigree that Campbell's system does. Like, I don't know if they're mixable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where it gets a little. That's where you kind of look at. It's like, okay, the personality is one thing. But if the personalities are meshed, but the schemes don't mesh, that means somebody's learning a brand new scheme.
Yep.
So either if you're bringing him on, you're bringing in a brand new system, you're going to hand over play calling duties to him 100%. I don't think Campbell's looking for that right now because he believes in his offensive system. I mean, hell, as bad as we perceived it to be, and mainly because the back half of the year fell apart, we were still like 5th in the NFL in scoring at 29 points a game.
Yeah.
Right now, granted, we ran some 50 burgers up on the Bears and the Redskins, but and then there were some flat spots against some of these teams that just blitzed the ever living heck out of us. But I just don't see him wanting to scrap his entire system. He wants somebody to come in that's going to adapt to his system, learn, put fresh eyes on it and say, this is where we can, these are opportunities we can make it even better. And I think Johnson did that. He sat for a year, with the Anthony Lynn disaster, or half a year.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next, the rest of the season there, he kind of sat and watched Campbell execute the offense the rest of the year, figured out how Dan wanted to do it, whether he was successful or not, figured out what he was trying to accomplish.
Right.
It's like a golfer. You know what you need to hit.
Right.
Can you do it, though?
Right. Right.
I've been on the course plenty of times. I know I need to hit that 9-iron exactly 90 yards, and it didn't go there, right? So
you can have all the want to in the world, but if you don't have the ability, it's
exactly. And that's where Johnson, I think, he earned Campbell's trust and respect, because he took Campbell's offense and he took it to another level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you see that he took it to the Bears. I mean, the Bears look a lot like us, except for the fact their quarterback completes about 20% less of the passes than our quarterback does. But you could see the concepts are there.
Sure.
And he didn't just, he adapted some of it to his current team, hence why they were so run heavy, because they had a good O-line that specialized in running the passer. And with Caleb Williams, he had somebody that could get out of trouble. He just wasn't necessarily experienced enough or seasoned enough to make you pay like an Aaron Rodgers would when he scrambled out, right?
There's
may
light
come for
years
Caleb
of difference
Williams.
of talent.
Oh,
I
my
think.
gosh.
Yeah, Caleb's
just
a backyard
too,
guy.
right?
It's like it's like a Manziel in a way. Even though I think Manziel
he's
is more
a bigger
athletic.
version of like Tua and Kyler Murray, and they're all coming from the same pedigree. These all are guys that passed through that Oklahoma system or Alabama system at some point, right? He's just a bigger version of those guys, or taller, I should say. He's not that much bigger. But he still has a lot to learn, right? And he had a lot of drops this year too. But regardless, I just can't see us going in the direction of an old recycled head coach that doesn't mesh with the system Campbell wants to run. That's the bottom line,
Brent, I'll let you have the pick of the litter. You can pick up the stuff that was left off the cracks and the crumbs from the Dayball conversation here, or you want to talk about Stefanski or Callahan as far as former head coaches that may or may, hell, Stefanski, these guys could get head coaching jobs. It's very possible. But any thoughts on Daboll, Stefanski, or Callahan?
I prefer Daboll. I really do.
Okay.
I absolutely think Daboll would come in and be moldable to the Lions culture. He's got a history with Dan Campbell. And I think that the truth of the matter is that we've got to have somebody that can be very, very close with Campbell. They're going to spend 15, 16 hours a day in the building, and I think I would prefer Daboll over any of those other candidates. I've watched Stefanski bounce around. No offense to him, he'd probably be a decent 2 or 3 on the list. But frankly, I go back to I'd rather have the young guys that you can develop into your system, into your culture. And because how many years do you get with Daboll before he ends up with another head coaching opportunity?
Yeah, or so Stefanski, right?
Exactly.
Any of these guys could go right back into a head coaching job and probably do fine.
100%. But if you do bring one of those guys in, you bring in Antoine Randall. You bring them in as your assistant offensive coordinator and a position coach, quarterback, receivers, whatever position that you want to bring them in as assistant, or just simply as assistant offensive coordinator and an offensive analyst, right? Like Morton ended up being. And so I think it's, if you pick the older guy, bring the young guy in with them as well.
So interesting enough, I know we keep saying Campbell would trust Daboll. Campbell worked for Daboll at Miami.
Mm-hmm.
He was the tight ends coach when Daboll was the OC there, right? So, but that team was a disaster, right? They weren't that good. They got their coach fired, mid-year. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know.
But these guys, these guys have worked together before. That's the point. And frankly,
it's 1 year overlap, right? and Dable was gone.
But they were young, right? They were younger coaches, up and coming. With Campbell's success, Daboll obviously had some success with the Giants as as a head coach, and he's got a proven track record. I mean, we're quibbling over what's good versus great. I think here, in terms of, I think any of these guys would be good candidates. Again, I think the model that I would add, Dan, is just bringing in that young guy to continue to develop them with some of these older experienced coaches.
So just, with Dable, number one, he's not young. He's 50, right? He's been around a while.
No. I said you bring in a young.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, just kind of to put the lid on this Dable thing. I just don't think that's happening. You guys brought up earlier about a guy who was job hopping. Dable was literally the definition of a guy that switched jobs constantly. But his choices were bad teams. He was with the Jets for 2 years, then he's with the Browns for 2 years, then he was the Dolphins for a year, then he was with the Chiefs for a year. The last 3 as offensive coordinator. He had 4 years and 3 different teams as OC. They were bad teams, I guess. Then he went to the Patriots for a tight ends coach.
Chiefs weren't bad.
Yeah. Well, why did he leave and go to the Patriots as a tight ends coach?
Opportunity.
I mean, you don't go from an OC to a tight ends coach as an opportunity, Brent. You either got fired or the staff got fired.
Right, but head coaches move on from guys.
Well, let me finish here. He had to go back and go to Alabama to resurrect his career. This is the path that so many coaches have gone. They went and they coached with Saban for a year, right? In 2017, he was the offensive coordinator of Bama. They probably won the national title that year, or were in the playoffs. And then he had his run with Buffalo, right? So the Buffalo is the only thing to me that actually matters, because you learn stuff by not winning, but he has a lot of time where he was an OC coach. He's got 5-6 years where he's an offensive coordinator where he wasn't winning. They were on teams that were just bad or whatever. So anyway, I just I'm just gonna stick to the guns. He's looking, the Randall L thing, I am all on board with that, and we'll know probably Tuesday, maybe Monday afternoon. JT Barrett, Randall L. I mean, the fact that they went after Blau tells you who he wants. He wants, and the guys they've got on his list. Yeah. The Pete's, the Blaus. He wants somebody younger he can bring in and mold, that he knows he may get for 2 years, maybe 3, likely 2. That's what he wants. Yeah. And I just can't see him. McDaniel's too good to pass up. But McDaniel's might be like the pipe dream, right? Everybody has one guy that they're like, hey,
I do like that they went after him.
This guy.
I do like that they went after him, and they announced that they went after him, like very early.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that is kind of atypical in terms of Holmes. Like like typically they're gonna talk to some people, and it's just sort of cloak and dagger, and then it leaves us Lions fans go,
wow.
Yeah, exactly. It leaves us thinking like, come on, guys, do something, take a shot. And then it was like immediately, we're going to talk to Mike McDaniel. And I think that was important for them to do. That sometimes it's about optics or whatever.
Well, him getting fired helped, because you don't have to ask for permission when somebody gets canned. Right.
Yeah.
Blau, we actually had to submit a request,
and
between us and I mean, the Redskins, the Commanders promoted him. They took him from 2 years of assistant quarterback coach to promote him to OC, because they see enough in him that they didn't want to see him lose him, right? And and I think that just tells you all you need to know about David Blau. He's going to be a good coach, But we'll see. We don't even know who they're looking at internally, if anybody. We talked about Montgomery briefly. I mentioned Choice last show, right? As the youngster on the roster.
Yeah. So we would definitely want to talk about the internal candidates, because I think it's important. Like sometimes you're just having these interviews, even if you think they're not as good as some of these other guys. Like so Scotty Montgomery, I think is. I mean, obviously has been, was the running backs coach, has been promoted to wide receiver. Yeah. And
assistant head coach.
Brent, Scotty took over, I mean, you could look at him and say he took Jamison Williams from kind of a frustrating gadget player to legitimate deep threat. He's taken steps, and is there a few drops? Sure. But you're going to get the other with it. helped maximize the Gibbs-Monty backfield when he was running backs coach. So do you feel like, Brent, from a player development standpoint, that his, does his resume suggest he has like that football IQ and schematic creativity to maybe coordinate an NFL offense? Even though obviously he hasn't done any play calling. I mean, they trust him, right? There seems to be like, we want to keep this guy here. What do you think?
I told you guys the last time we talked about this. If he is of that cut, if he is the guy that could be nurtured to become the offensive coordinator, I don't think that we have any indication of that.
Okay.
So, it's us, much like Dan said earlier, we're speculating about things, about guys that haven't even been connected to the Lions. You don't hear Campbell going on and talking at length about Montgomery and his upside like he did with Johnson, like he did with Shep. So I just don't see any indication that that's going to be the route that they take, to be frank with you.
Yeah. With Shep, he was a progression, almost like a coach in waiting. And the next guy on the list we do know about, and that is Sean Dion Hamilton, the linebacker coach. That's right. They're talking about him, and even Deshae Townsend a little bit. They're talking about those two guys like they talked about Shep, and to your point, Brent, I mean, just not to be brutally honest, if Scotty Montgomery was the guy, we wouldn't have gone out and hired John Morton. So, he was on the roster. This is his third year. He's been on the roster a few years. Now, Tashard Choice was only a 1-year guy last year, and he's very young. I mean, Scotty's been an NFL assistant coach for 20 years, right? And if we were going to hire him or Fraley or Brunell, I think they would have done that and started getting Morton last year and keeping these guys in place. And, they did add the assistant head coach to Montgomery and change his role, maybe to diversify him and maybe to prep him to become more of an offensive coordinator or help him get to that role down the line. You know what I mean? So now he's been wide receiver and a assistant head coach and a running back coach. So maybe that will help him. But I just, there's guys, I mentioned Choice, two other guys whose names jump out at me, and this is lineage, right? Not this year, next year, maybe after the next guy. You've got Bruce Gradkowski sitting out there as an offensive assistant.
That's a name people are talking for sure. Yep.
And he needs to get a position coach to kind of get that next layer. And then the other guy, and this is another quarterback, Marcus Tuiasosopo. He is also an offensive assistant. So we've got two quarterbacks or OC offensive assistants on our roster just begging to be brought through the process, to be brought up along with Choice, who has been, he was running back. I think it was it Louisville maybe or something like that. One of those like Conference USA schools. But that's three guys that are young enough that they are just like sitting there as guys to develop and bring forward and eventually, give them a spot in the roster. I mean, this is that Tanner Egstrom guy from last year, or the JT Barrett who went over with Ben Johnson, or that's who these guys are. These are the youngsters that you bring them in and you see promise and you hope that they develop and catch on. They're not doing anything this year, but within 2-3 years, whoever we hire as OC this year, assuming we keep going and, and we keep having success, these will be the next layer of internal hires that we may have.
All right, guys, as we look to wrap up, and by the way, if you're watching or listening, hit the subscribe, the like, smash all the stuff in front of you. It helps the show, helps us to go live even twice a week like we are doing this week. Make sure you tune in Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern for Lions Gray Mains. Guys, I want to do this. This is a bit of a surprise. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm gonna make you name, here we go. Give me your top 3 candidates for offensive coordinator in order. Tell me which one best balances the scheme fit, player development, all the stuff we talked about, retention risk, cultural alignment with Campbell. Just, and listen, I mean, we're not going to hold you to it. This is the internet. Things change every 2 seconds, right? By the time you name your top 3, they could be hired by another team. Who knows? So I'm going to start with you, Brent, since Dan went last time. I'm going to put the the Chief Intelligence Officer of Lions Optimism here on the hot seat. Brent, give me your top 3, rank them, and tell me, who represents the biggest risk and reward for the Lions.
I still sit firmly with Antoine Randall as my number one guy.
Wow. Okay.
He is everything that I think Ben Johnson was, 4 years ago. I would love to see him come in and settle with the Lions for the next 3 to 4 years while getting mentored and developed by Campbell. I think that frankly, there's a very small window here because, as Dan said, there's the Seattle is sitting at home on a bye, so I would love for the Lions to look at the Seahawks. Peace. How do you say his name? Peace. Yep. Peace. Yep. Pete's.
Like
Yep.
You've got
not Rodney Peets.
Yeah. Like you've got 2 guys named Rodney. Pete that are sitting next to you. They're the Peets. So
they're the Peets. Because
Bob's. So what does it say you do around here?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Bob.
So
Bob,
you may see a theme here, right? With my first 2.
Yeah.
But for the third one, I literally there's 8 NFL head coaching positions open. Why would Brian Daboll not be given a chance to take one of those positions? But if Brian Daboll is available, I'd love for Brian Daboll to come in with somebody young, or look at internal candidates, right? To develop as we've been discussing. Scotty Montgomery would be, they'd be able to make a full assessment. And is he going to be the guy? Yeah, I don't personally, as I said, I think he's
maybe not ready. I like that 3. So Randall L., Peets, and Daboll. Dan, who you got? Your top 3.
I'm going to give you 2 lists: the external list and the internal.
Of course, we can't just come on. Yeah, well, this is like
now,
I'm going to give you 16 honorable mentions.
List.
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
No, I've got 4 guys, right? Not just 3. So I am also on board 100% with Brent. Randall L would be my number 1 choice.
Wow. Okay.
Because number 1 at weekend Chicago. So number 2, I think he knows the system. He knows what needs to be done. He was beloved by the players here. I think it would be a strength to bring him back and bring some continuity back to our offense, and and let him get a shot, to call those plays. My number 2 would be Shieldhouse out there. I love integrating anything from McVay's world, into the Campbell style offense that comes up from the other Sean Payton's world. I think those 2 worlds are very closely aligned. And if you could take those 2 and take some of those McVay concepts, I mean, I don't care. He could have some bum off the street throwing the ball and put in some 5th rounder like Puka in that one slot. The guy's going to catch 1,000 yards and 100 balls, right? It's just the way the offense works. And I'd like to have those concepts, and not just that, but just the being exposed to how the McVay offense is run. They always seem to call the right play at the right time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, my last one, and it would have been Blau. Actually, Blau probably would have been second, to be honest with you, behind Randall L. But I'm going to stick with JT Barrett. He's quarterback coach for Chicago.
Yep.
He was here. He was our assistant quarterback coach.
Yep.
He is, I'm very familiar with him from his Ohio State days. And they always talked about him as being a future coach.
Yeah.
The guy is that smart because, he was more of a running back than a quarterback. He was a lot like Jalen Hurts, right? His body, he's a little bit bigger dude, could run, he could throw it some. He's a good enough thrower, but he was his ability to see the field and dissect and know where to go with it overcame his lack of like arm and anything like that. And then, lastly, if they strike out there, I'm not, McDaniel, if they hire him, awesome. I have zero interest in Daboll. I know Brent's been talking about him. I have zero interest in that guy. I don't think he's going to get a head coaching gig. He's had one, is with the Giants. They were just a disaster. He's going to have to go back and prove himself. which means this will be the second time in his career that he's had to go back and resurrect his career somewhere. So I'm not interested in Daboll. He's too old. His system doesn't necessarily mesh with Campbell's system. So there's too many red flags there for me. But lastly, if we're going to stick with somebody internal, I would look at seeing if Choice is somebody that has the mind to do that. He's very young. He's not a quarterback. There's no way that the other guys are ready. Gradkowski, Tuyas, so those guys aren't ready. They've just been assistants. I would not have Brunell do it. He seems to be working out well with Goff in the quarterback room.
Yeah.
I hate to mess with that.
Right.
Montgomery, Brent kind of nailed it. Like, we don't hear the praise coming about him or even anybody on the offense. You just don't hear that lineage of praise out there. Hey, this guy is going to be a coach. We heard about it with Johnson. We heard about it with Glenn. Who was our running back coach that used to spar with Glenn all the time that left a couple years ago?
He was pre-Montgomery as a running backs coach?
Yes.
I can't think of his name, but yeah, on the Hard Knocks, they had them chirping at each other all the time.
They were always chirping at each other. Like,
those guys. Staley.
Deuce Staley, thank you.
Like, yep. Staley, where's he at?
I thought he was at Pittsburgh.
I don't know what happened to him.
He was a coach at Pittsburgh, I want to say, for a minute. But yeah, you're right. I haven't heard much about him. Panthers.
Carolina.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, he went, whoever he left us for, he got fired because the whole staff got fired, right? It's just one of those wrong place, wrong time. You thought you were going to go.
Sorry,
and
he's
make
with the
a
Browns. He's the running backs coach for the Browns.
Well, scratch him off the list. But I don't think the running game was the problem for the Browns. I mean, you can go look at the Quinshon Judkins. That guy had a monster season for a rookie till he got hurt. So, but anyway, that's who we're going to be looking for. I really feel. I just can't see us going after a recycled head coach unless it's the guy, which is a McDaniel. Harbaugh is not coming here. He's going to be the number one option for every single place. I think McDaniel's probably number 2 or number 3 option for most head coaching roles. I just don't know how many recycled head coaches are going to get picked up this year. Clearly, no one's going to pick up Pete Carroll. That dude was done when he left Seattle and never should have come back to coaching.
Yeah. Hey, by the way,
too old.
Yeah. By the way, Montgomery's 47, Daboll's 50. Fraley's 48. I mean, all these guys are about the same age. And when we say young, to me, those guys are like in the prime of, they've got the right experiences. They're at the point where
they're in the window.
They're in the window. Yep.
But they're outside the young gun window, but they're in the window if they have consistently produced and shown they have the mentality. Maybe they just didn't get the opportunity before for some reason.
Yeah, Daboll's still young though, was the point I was going to make. I mean, he's not, and he's 50. He's like 2 years older than a couple of these guys that we've been talking about. But my next guys on the list, Shieldhouse was next on my list. I can't remember who it was at the start of the show.
Dang it, guys! I knew if I asked you guys for 3, you'd give me 17 apiece. I knew it.
We kept it within like 4.
I followed the rules.
But now that I think about it, I think we could have the assistant passing game coffee coordinator from the Seattle Seahawks.
Dan gave extra names.
So
I also gave names who I don't want.
All right.
No, I just said I like. I mean, he would have been next on my list if I'd been allowed to give 4.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you.
Last news and notes. Just a couple things.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, we did have a couple news and notes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we did. Couple things. Hutch is going to be on the ESPN pregame shows for ESPN. I just want to make sure all those Lions fans out there caught that. It's really a cool thing because he's such a nice guy, so articulate, and he represents the Lions so well. And frankly, I can't remember a time when we've had guys put up on social media, or excuse me, on game day or Fox, like Gronk in his younger days and all. So for me personally, that's a really good indicator of where the Lions have come to.
And just for some for detail there, Hutch will be in the studio in New York. This will be ESPN's pregame show, which is called Postseason NFL Countdown. and it will be starting at 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. And then the last thing that we had agreed to kind of post up is the All Pro list. And you guys know I was banging the drum from the beginning of the season for Jack Campbell, and man, he had a great season, an absolutely fantastic season. And I know you guys were big fans as well. I'm not saying that you guys disagreed with me. I really thought he was going to have a fantastic year, and he met those expectations, and he's such a great leader. But please, 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 Lions, re-sign Anzalone on some deal that you could navigate yourself out of in a year or two, because I think the combination of Jack and Anzalone is needed next year for our defense.
Yeah, we got to get some linebackers under contract.
You got two.
Yeah.
Yep. I got one more add on to the news thing there, Chris.
Sure.
So new today, Mike Disner did not get the president position with the Falcons.
Yes,
he
right.
interviewed for. He was one of the 5. It went to Matt Ryan, but I guess they double interviewed. It was both for the president and the GM, and Disner's the COO of the Lions, so he's not stepping down to the GM, I don't think.
No.
So I think we can say he's coming back for now, right? And then Jet Modkins, our assistant special teams coordinator, who by all accounts the beat writers love this guy. He's been part of some very good special teams, despite what anybody wants to say, outside of a few Bates misses this year. And they've done pretty well the last several years, especially on punt returns. He got interviewed by Tampa today for their special teams coordinator position, which kind of came out of the blue. So they looked at him, and they also who else did they take a peek at of ours? David Shaw. Yeah. I don't have that updated. Yep. David Shaw, who's our passing game coordinator, also got looked at by Tampa Bay today. So those are all updated on the graymains.com. I've got a running Lions Live coaching tracker out there. It's got all the updates for guys that on our staff that are looking elsewhere, and all of the guys that we're looking at. And we do have, we're all the Twitter about the offensive coordinator, but hey, we don't have a tight ends coach right now either. And we've got an all pro tight end that needs a coach. And I'm thinking, hey, anybody remember the name Abdul Hodge? He used to be a linebacker for the Bengals.
Did you say Ali Haji Sheik?
No, I did not say Ali Haji Sheik.
Well, that's a great
Abdul Hodge.
Ali Haji Sheik.
If you want to get a tight ends coach for one of the best tight ends in the league, go get the guy that coached him in college. Abdul Hodge is the current Iowa tight ends coach.
Oh,
he coached
Tight End University.
He's only been there for 2 years. Unfortunately, Brian Ferentz was the tight end coach before him, and
so he coached Kittle.
He's got too much baggage. That dude's just there's a no touch sign on him. That's why he's at Fresno State now. He got fired by his own dad. And before him, Kirk Ferentz was actually the tight ends coach while he was head coach. So, but it's a mentality, right? It's how we want these guys coached. But Hodge has been there 2 years. He had Laporta as a senior or junior, whatever his last year in college was. And then he coached Lachey, who was a 7th round pick this year. He's the son of former Ohio State offensive tackle and Washington Redskin Lachey.
Jim Lachey.
Lachey. Yep. So, and he coached him. And then he also has coached some other players before that have made the league from other teams. So just throwing it out there, Campbell went to the college well last year for a tight end coach. So, it didn't work out because obviously, it worked out, but the pull to go back and be offensive coordinator at Iowa State was strong for some reason. So he could actually do it again. But there's some good ones out there. I think Michigan, they just hired a guy, Whittingham, I think his name is, as tight end coach. It's had a lot of success in college ball. That might be someone to look at.
It's his son, Chris.
Oh, I was like,
oh, is it?
He was
is
a
it
head coach.
Oh, is that his son?
Yeah.
It's his son. He hired his son. Yeah.
But the other guy is the guy that's at Georgia. So this guy they're mainly known for receiving guys like the Brock Bowers and those guys. But there's opportunities out there to go grab a guy if you want to get an up and comer from the college ranks. So, but we'll see where that goes. I'm surprised it hasn't been filled yet, but that could very well be somebody, I think Tampa's tight end coach was highly, and O-line coach were highly respected, and they're both maybe available. Because those positions can be interchangeable, depending on those guys. A lot of times they do both in the NFL at various stops. So, but anyway, that's it on the coaching changes. So I think we're all caught up there. And then, I think Tuesday, Brent brought it up in our chat, and I'm going to put a piece together on. I think we're going to talk a little bit about this whole David Montgomery situation.
Yep.
I think that's a good topic for Tuesday because, it feels like he's asking, not the Lions wanting, but it also sounded like they're prepared to let him go or do something. So I have an article coming together on all the pros and cons and the ramifications of it, and we could talk through that on Tuesday just as kind of a teaser.
There you go. That's going to be Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Wanda says, great show, lots of information. Love y'all. We love you too, Wanda. Thank you for joining us each and every week and joining in the chat. And for those that are still watching on all of the tubes, we do appreciate you, even if you didn't have the guts like Wanda did to chat. We appreciate you joining us. Again, hit all the likes, the subscribes, all that stuff you see on the screen certainly helps us run this show, and we will see you Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. And as always, we love to say, go Lions.
Bust it outside left. Jameer down to the 10. Jameer to the 5. Jameer to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Hand off Berry. Skirts to the left side. Breaks the tackle. And he will take it in. Touchdown.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. That's what I'm talking about. It is caught.